All right, this is our video on, I kind of wanted to take a little time to explain the next lesson. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pretending that you graduated graduated college, you have the job of your dreams, the one that you chose, at your salary, okay, everything is going great, and you're going to be searching for a rental property to live in, all right? So, there are some rules about rentals that we need to be able to follow. Rule number one. You can't spend more than 30% of your take-home pay each month on rent. That is a general rule followed by lots of landlords. So the landlord is the person who actually owns the place you're going to be living in. And so landlords want to make sure that you have the ability to actually pay the rent. So this is a limit that most landlords use. In fact, it would be on the application. How much money do you make? And if you don't make enough to be able to have, say, 30% of your take-home pay as the rent, you're not going to get the apartment or the place. So this is something that we need to think about. And so you're going to be using your spreadsheet you created in lesson 3.4 to determine 30% of your monthly take-home pay. Rule number two, you're going to have to live somewhere so that you can get to your job in a reasonable amount of time. For example, let's say you worked in New York City. It would be problematic for you to live in Rhode Island. But if you worked in New York City, you could live in lots of places. So for example, you could live in New York City. You could live in Manhattan. Maybe you could live in Brooklyn. Maybe you would live in the Bronx. Maybe you would live in Westchester County and you would take the train into work. Those are the things I want you to start thinking about. But for the purposes of this project, I'm going to restrict you to this. You can't live any more than 30 miles from your job. So you're going to be actually kind of picking a place to work. So if you think you could get a job in the city, you would work in New York City. If you think you could get a job in Westchester County, you can say, okay, I'm going to work in Scarsdale, or I'm going to work in Greenwich, Connecticut, or places like that. All right, rule number three, you can join together to find a roommate. So you can decide to do this project with somebody. Some of you might realize this might be the best option for you because then you can combine your incomes. So for example, if 30% of Johnny's take-home pay is $1,000 and 30% of Jane's take-home pay is $1,500, they could combine that to make $2,500, and that would be okay for the rent. So you can combine them. All right, so steps to deciding where you live. You're going to be first deciding the town or city in which you will work. All right, and you can make this up, be creative. If you need a little help with that, I'll help you. You're going to decide if you're living solo or if you'll team up with someone in our class to have a roommate. All right? If you have a roommate, it's going to be helpful in terms of paying for things. You may want to look for properties first and then decide to have a roommate, or you might want to decide whether or not you're going to have a roommate and then look at properties. That's really up to you. Here's the key, though. If you're going to adopt a roommate, you have to find a location that suits both of your needs. So, for example, if you work in New York City and your roommate works in Poughkeepsie, I'm just making this up, you probably can't live in Brooklyn because that might work for the person going to New York City, but it wouldn't work for the person going to Poughkeepsie. So you have to keep that in mind about your location. All right, step three. You're going to use the site www.realtor.com and choose 4 properties to research. So, for example, here's realtor.com. I think it defaults to for sale, but we're going to go to for rent. And if I just put in Greenwich, Connecticut, continue, all right? And you can see lots of properties, and you can search. So, for example, if you have a roommate, you may need 2 bedrooms, okay? You may want 2 bathrooms, okay? By the way, just as a notion, there is something called a half bath. A half bath is just a bathroom with a toilet and a sink. That means there's no shower or bathtub. That's what a half bath is. All right. You may even think about having pets. That's not a requirement for the project. But then I can click, for example, I can click on this property and I can view it. My rent is $2,200 a month. I see it has 2 beds, 1 bath, and I can look at some of the pictures of it. Okay, here it is. All right, it's a little dated, but that's okay. Your first apartment, not necessarily going to be your dream place to live, but it's going to be a safe and clean place to live. But these are important things to think about, all right? Then you're going to be creating a spreadsheet and sharing it with me. So you're going to be creating a spreadsheet with the address of the property. So this would be 15 Windy Knolls, Unit B, okay, Greenwich, Connecticut. Whoops, excuse me, hold on a second. Where am I here? Type of property, is it an apartment? Is it a condo? In this case, it looks like, you may have to read here. So this is bright, sunny, pristine unit on entire second floor of colonial home. So I would call this, you could call this a home, or you could say this is a multi-family home. It's an apartment within a home, something like that. Number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, the square footage, that's how big the place is. So in this case, we have, it looks like, our square footage should be here. Okay, I'm looking. Huh. Now that's interesting. There's no square footage listed. All right, so apparently Realtor.com does not do a very good job of listing the square footage, but that's okay. So what we can do is copy and paste the address into, regular Google search engine. So copy and paste, paste into the Google search engine. And up will come a link for Zillow, hopefully, and you can get the square footage off of there. So 2,634 square feet, which is huge for a two-bedroom apartment. Huge. So you're going to be finding the rent, obviously, the rental dollars per square foot. In other words, how much money you're spending per square foot. You can figure out a formula in the spreadsheet that will give you this value. You can do distance from work. So just to show you that, you can do that on Google Maps. So I can type in Stamford, Connecticut. All right, I can hit directions, switch this to Stamford, Connecticut, to Blindbrook High School. That's where I work. All right, and it'll actually show me. It'll show me the route. And we've done this before. It'll show you. It actually shows you the distance, and it also shows you the time. Now this is, of course, without traffic. So this is interesting enough. This is the time without traffic. So you'd have to add a little bit for traffic. And how will you get to work? You might not drive to work. You might take a train. You might take a subway. You might walk to work if you live in New York City. Things to think about. Step 4. You will choose a property from the 4 you researched and fill out the Google form below. A written response explaining why you chose it, using information from your spreadsheet. And of course, you can say things like, I really like the granite countertops in the kitchen, but your decision has to be based in part on the information you collected in your spreadsheet. So in your explanation, you must include the following items. You need to provide a link to the rental posting. Can you afford to rent this property? In other words, did you follow the 30% rule? How far are you from your chosen work location? How far are you from your chosen work location? How would you commute to work? What do you like about the property? And what might be something you don't like about the property? So for example, my first rental property, I rented from my father, who still owns an office space for his business, for his chiropractic practice, and in the back there are 2 apartments. And I rented one of those from him because it was closer to my job at the time. And was it perfect? No. I mean, it was dated. It had old carpet and things like that. But it was something that was close to work, and it was close to my friends, and that was important to me at the time. And so here's the link to the Google form. All right, very good, and happy finding a home.